My name is Eleanor, and at 68 years old, I never expected betrayal would come from family. After selling our Michigan home following Frank's death, I arrived at my son Robert's doorstep with $300,000 cash, intending to help him achieve his lifelong dream. But what I overheard in that house shattered my heart completely. My daughter-in-law Amanda had plans for my money that left me speechless and forced me to make the most painful decision of my life. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button before I share how I discovered the cruel truth behind my daughter-in-law's welcoming smile. Frank and I shared 45 beautiful years together. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had built a comfortable life in our modest Michigan home, raising our only son Robert with all the love we could give. Frank worked as a mechanic his entire life, and I was an elementary school teacher until retirement. We were ordinary people who valued family above everything else. When Frank suffered a massive heart attack last year, my world collapsed around me. For months, I wandered through our family home like a ghost, touching his things, smelling his pillow until his scent faded completely. The grief was overwhelming. Our two-story, four-bedroom house that once felt so full of laughter now echoed with emptiness. Every corner held memories that simultaneously comforted and tormented me. After 6 months of rattling around in that big house alone, I made the difficult decision to sell it. Our neighborhood had become increasingly valuable over the years, and to my surprise, the house sold quickly for $300,000. As I signed the final paperwork, I felt both a crushing sadness and strange relief. It was time for a new chapter, however uncertain it might be. Robert had married Amanda 7 years ago in a beautiful summer ceremony. I remembered how Frank had beamed with pride walking alongside me at the wedding. Amanda had seemed perfect then, intelligent, ambitious, and apparently devoted to Robert. She worked in marketing for a large corporation while my son followed in his father's footsteps as a mechanic at a local dealership. At first, our relationship had been cordial. Amanda sent birthday cards, called occasionally, and seemed to make an effort during holiday gatherings. But over the years I noticed subtle changes. The phone calls became less frequent. Visits were often canceled at the last minute due to Amanda's work emergencies. When we did get together, I noticed how she subtly controlled conversations, often speaking for Robert or cutting him off mid-sentence. Frank had noticed too. "Something's not right there," he would mutter after they left. "Our boy doesn't seem happy." But we kept our concerns to ourselves, not wanting to interfere in their marriage. Robert had always dreamed of opening his own auto repair shop. Since he was a teenager tinkering with engines in our garage, he talked about Robert's repairs, or sometimes Frank and Son Auto Shop. After selling the house, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the money. Frank would have wanted Robert to have it to finally make his dream come true. I planned a 3-day visit to Robert and Amanda's home in Illinois. They had moved there 2 years ago when Amanda received a promotion. The distance made visits rare, and I was looking forward to spending quality time with my son. Against the bank manager's strong recommendations, I withdrew the entire $300,000 in cash. I wanted to present it to Robert in a meaningful way, to see his face when he realized he could finally open his shop. The bank required special arrangements for such a large cash withdrawal, and the manager repeatedly suggested a cashier's check instead. But I was determined. This was about more than money. It was about passing on Frank's legacy to our son. I traveled by train with the cash securely hidden in my luggage, my heart fluttering with anticipation. The journey gave me time to imagine Robert's reaction. Would he cry? Would he resist accepting such a large gift? I rehearsed what I would say. "This isn't just from me. It's from your father too. He always believed in your dream." When I arrived at their modest suburban home, Robert greeted me with a warm hug that reminded me so much of Frank it made my eyes water. "Mom, you made it," he exclaimed, taking my bags. Amanda appeared behind him, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Eleanor, welcome," she said, giving me a brief, stiff hug. "I hope your journey wasn't too exhausting." There was something performative about her greeting that made me uneasy, but I dismissed it as simple awkwardness. We hadn't seen each other in nearly a year after all. Their house was immaculately decorated in a style that seemed straight out of a catalog, beautiful but impersonal. No family photos adorned the walls, No mementos or keepsakes displayed. It looked like a showroom rather than a home. "We've put you in the guest room," Amanda explained, leading me down a hallway. "It's at the opposite end of the house from our bedroom, so you'll have plenty of privacy." The room was lovely but felt isolated, separated from the main living areas by several doors. That first evening, Amanda prepared an impressive dinner. As we ate, I noticed how she subtly directed conversation away from any meaningful topics. When I asked Robert about his work, Amanda quickly interjected with stories about her recent business trip. When I mentioned Frank, she swiftly changed the subject to their lawn care challenges. By dessert, I realized I had barely heard Robert speak, and he seemed content to let Amanda lead. There was a resignation in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. As I unpacked in the guest room later, carefully hiding the cash in my suitcase beneath my clothes, I felt a vague uneasiness. Something felt off about this visit, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. I dismissed it as the natural awkwardness of reuniting after a long separation, and the lingering grief over Frank. Tomorrow would be better, I told myself as I drifted off to sleep in the unfamiliar bed. I woke early the next morning, excited to spend the day with Robert. But when I emerged from my room, the house was quiet. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Mom, had to head in early for work. Amanda has meetings until afternoon. Help yourself to breakfast. Robert." Disappointment settled in my chest like a cold stone. I had traveled all this way, and yet I was alone in their house. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, trying to shake off the feeling of abandonment. Perhaps I had misunderstood the purpose of this visit. Perhaps they hadn't realized I had hoped for quality time together. Around 10 o'clock, I heard the front door open. Amanda appeared in workout clothes, seeming surprised to see me sitting there. "Oh, Eleanor, I forgot you're an early riser," she said, pouring herself a glass of water. "I just got back from my morning spin class." I attempted to connect with her, asking about her work and life in Illinois. Her answers were polite but brief, creating an invisible barrier between us. When I offered to make us both some breakfast, she declined. "I've got a conference call in 15 minutes. Maybe another time," she said, already backing toward the hallway. "Make yourself at home, though." Left alone again, I decided to make myself useful. I noticed dishes in the sink from the night before, so I washed them carefully and dried each one by hand. I was nearly finished when Amanda returned. "Oh, you didn't need to do that," she said, a slight edge to her voice. "We have a dishwasher, and I have a specific way I like to load it." She began rearranging the clean dishes I had already put away, subtly implying I had placed them incorrectly. I retreated to the living room, feeling chastised like a child. Through the partially open office door, I could hear Amanda on her phone. "Yes, she's here now," she was saying in a hushed tone. "No, it's fine, just inconvenient timing with everything else going on." Well, what was I supposed to say? She's Robert's mother. Just 3 days, then back to normal. Yes, it's exhausting having to entertain a mother-in-law. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I was a burden to them, an obligation rather than a welcome guest. I quietly moved away from the door before she could discover me eavesdropping. Robert returned home around 6, looking exhausted. "Sorry about today, Mom," he said, giving me a quick hug. "The shop is short-staffed, and we had a lineup of emergency repairs." "It's no problem," I assured him, though my heart ached for the lost time. "We still have tomorrow and the next day." Amanda orchestrated dinner with the same controlled precision as the night before. This time, however, the conversation centered entirely around their plans to renovate the kitchen and master bathroom. "The contractor gave us a quote," Amanda explained, showing me kitchen designs on her tablet. "We're thinking marble countertops, custom cabinets, new appliances. The works." "That sounds expensive," I commented. "Investment in property always pays off," Amanda replied smoothly. "We're just trying to decide if we should do it now or wait until we have the full amount saved." Throughout the meal, I noticed how Robert deferred to Amanda on every detail of their renovation plans. The passionate young man who once had strong opinions about everything had been replaced by someone who simply nodded along. After dinner, Amanda announced they had tickets to a work colleague's art show. "We can't miss it," she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Sharon is my boss's wife, and it would look bad if we didn't show up. Of course, I said, forcing a smile. Don't worry about me. I'm still tired from traveling anyway. Alone in their house, I wandered from room to room, feeling like an intruder. In the hallway closet, I discovered several photo albums pushed to the back shelf. Curious, I took them to the living room and began flipping through pages of Robert's life. What struck me immediately was the systematic removal of my presence. Photos I knew had included me had been carefully cropped or replaced with versions where I was absent. Pictures from Robert's graduation, his wedding, family holidays. I had been literally cut out of their documented history. Even stranger, photos of Frank remained intact. It was only me who had been erased. I returned the albums with shaking hands, fighting back tears. What had I done to deserve such treatment? Had there been some unforgivable offense I couldn't recall? Around 11, I heard their car in the driveway. I quickly retreated to my room, not wanting them to know I had discovered the altered photo albums. Through the wall, I could hear them arguing in hushed but intense voices. I told you we should have scheduled this for another weekend, Amanda was saying. We have too much going on right now. She's my mother, Amanda, Robert replied, his voice tired. It's just 3 days. 3 days of babysitting and changing all our plans. Your mother always has the worst timing. She's still grieving, Dad. Cut her some slack. It's been a year, Robert. Life goes on. Everyone loses people. Their voices faded as they moved to their bedroom at the opposite end of the house. I lay awake for hours, a hollow feeling expanding in my chest. My excitement about the gift was dimming, replaced by uncertainty and hurt. Would money really fix whatever was broken in this household? On the second morning, I was determined to spend time with Robert before he left for work. I woke at 5:30 and prepared coffee, waiting in the kitchen until I heard movement from their bedroom. Robert appeared in his work clothes, seeming surprised to find me there. Mom, you're up early, he said, accepting the coffee I offered. For a few precious minutes we talked about normal things, his job, my adjustment to life without Frank, memories from his childhood. I saw glimpses of my son again in those moments, his eyes lighting up as he described a challenging engine repair he'd completed. I still remember everything Dad taught me, he said with a sad smile. Sometimes I can almost hear his voice when I'm working on a tough problem. I was about to mention the money and his dream of opening his own shop when Amanda appeared, already dressed for work in an expensive-looking suit. There you are, she said to Robert, barely acknowledging me. Don't forget you promised to drop off those documents at the attorney's office before work. Right, Robert said, his demeanor instantly changing. Sorry, Mom, I've got to run. Maybe we can talk more tonight. Just like that, he was gone, leaving his coffee half-finished on the counter. Amanda busied herself making a protein shake, the loud blender effectively preventing any conversation. When she finished, she glanced at her watch with exaggerated concern. I've got meetings all morning, but I should be home around 2, she said. Will you be okay entertaining yourself until then? Actually, I was wondering if I could help you with anything around the house, I offered. I noticed your garden looks like it could use some attention. Amanda's expression tightened momentarily before she forced a smile. If you really want to, I suppose you could pull some weeds. Just be careful with the hydrangeas by the fence. They're very particular about soil conditions. After she left, I spent the morning in their backyard. The garden showed signs of neglect, overgrown shrubs, weeds choking flower beds, wilting plants that needed watering. I worked steadily, finding comfort in the familiar task. Gardening had always been my therapy, and Frank and I had maintained beautiful gardens at our Michigan home. Well, look at you working away, came a friendly voice. I turned to see an older woman leaning over the fence from the neighboring yard. I'm Grace, live next door. You must be Robert's mother. Eleanor, I confirmed, grateful for the friendly face. Just trying to help out a bit while visiting. Grace's expression was knowing. First time visiting since they moved in, isn't it? Don't think I've seen you before. It's been difficult to arrange, I admitted. With losing my husband last year, and then selling our home. I'm sorry for your loss, Grace said sincerely. Robert mentioned his father had passed. He seems like such a nice young man. Very different from his wife. The way she emphasized the last word piqued my interest. Oh. Grace glanced around conspiratorially before continuing. Well, between us, that woman has systematically cut Robert off from making any friends in the neighborhood. They moved in 2 years ago, and at first Robert would chat with everyone, offered to help my husband with our car troubles, even came to a neighborhood barbecue. Then suddenly nothing. Polite waves from a distance but always rushing. Always too busy for community events. I tried not to appear too eager for information. Maybe they're just private people. Private is one thing. Isolated is another, Grace replied. My husband and I have been here 30 years, and we know controlling behavior when we see it. That woman keeps him on a short leash. And the way she talks to him sometimes. She shook her head disapprovingly. I didn't generally approve of neighborhood gossip, but Grace's observations aligned with my own concerns. We chatted a while longer before she excused herself to start lunch, leaving me with even more worries about Robert's situation. Amanda returned precisely at 2, eyebrows raising as she surveyed my work in the garden. You've been busy, she said, her tone making it unclear whether this was a compliment or criticism, though those roses shouldn't have been pruned until fall. I only removed the dead blooms, I explained, trying to keep my voice even. It encourages new growth. Well, I suppose everyone has their gardening theories, she replied dismissively. Would you like some lunch? I picked up salads on my way home. Over lunch on their patio, Amanda steered the conversation in an unexpected direction. So, Eleanor, now that you've sold your house, what are your plans? Will you buy something smaller? I'm not sure yet, I replied cautiously. I'm staying in a small apartment for now while I figure things out. Real estate can be such a headache at our age, she continued, emphasizing our, as though we were peers despite the 30-year age gap between us. Have you considered senior living communities? There's a lovely one near my parents in Florida. Very upscale, with activities and care available as needed. I straightened in my chair. I'm in excellent health, Amanda, and I prefer to maintain my independence. Of course, she backpedaled smoothly. It's just that these transitions can be difficult. And living alone at your age comes with risks. I'm 68, not 98, I said firmly. Amanda's phone buzzed, and she checked it, a small smile playing on her lips as she typed a response. Throughout our lunch, she continued texting, occasionally glancing up at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Do you mind if I ask about your financial arrangements after the house sale? She asked suddenly. It's just that Robert worries about you, and we want to make sure you're taken care of. The question felt invasive, but I kept my response vague. Everything's in order. Frank was always good with planning. But $300,000 isn't really much these days, is it? She pressed. Especially with healthcare costs and inflation. I wondered how she knew the exact amount from the house sale. Robert must have told her, though I didn't recall sharing that specific figure with him. I'll manage just fine, I assured her, increasingly uncomfortable with her probing. After lunch, Amanda disappeared into her home office for more urgent calls, leaving me alone again. Restless and troubled by our conversation, I wandered through the house. In the dining room, a folder sat open on the table, containing what appeared to be contractor estimates for their planned renovations. I shouldn't have looked, but concern for my son overrode my usual respect for privacy. The detailed quote outlined extensive kitchen and bathroom renovations totaling just over $300,000, almost exactly the amount I had received for our family home. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. Was this why Amanda had been asking about my finances? Was she hoping I would contribute to their home renovations? The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. These weren't necessary repairs but luxury upgrades to an already perfectly functional home. That evening, dinner conversation took an even more disturbing turn when Amanda casually brought up the topic of elder care. My colleague Barbara just had to place her mother in assisted living, she mentioned, serving Robert a generous portion of lasagna, while giving me a considerably smaller piece. It was such a difficult decision, but ultimately the best for everyone's safety and peace of mind. That's unfortunate, I murmured, watching Robert's reaction. He kept his eyes fixed on his plate. The place they chose has a 2-year waiting list normally, but they got lucky with an opening, Amanda continued. The thing is, you really have to plan ahead for these situations. Having liquid assets available makes all the difference in securing quality care. The conversation felt like a performance designed specifically for me, suggesting that I should be planning for my eventual dependence and incapacity. Throughout the meal, Robert remained mostly silent, offering only non-committal responses when directly addressed. I searched his face for signs of the confident, outspoken son I had raised, but found only a shadow. As I prepared for bed that night, my concerns had evolved into genuine worry. The subtle manipulations I was witnessing suggested something far more troubling than mere rudeness or dislike. Amanda seemed to be systematically isolating Robert, and now appeared to have designs on my financial resources as well. What bothered me most was my son's apparent surrender to her control. I placed my hand on the locked suitcase containing the cash, wondering if my gift would truly benefit Robert, or if it would simply disappear into Amanda's renovation plans. For the first time, I questioned whether I should give it to him at all under these circumstances. By the 3rd day of my visit, I had resolved to give Robert the money as planned, but with clear stipulations that it was for his auto shop dream, not home renovations. I would present it after dinner, hopefully during a moment when Robert and I could speak privately. After breakfast, Amanda announced she was going shopping at a designer outlet mall about an hour away. I'll probably be gone most of the day, she said, gathering her purse and keys. Robert had to work a double shift at the shop to cover for someone, so he won't be home until late. I was disappointed to lose another day with Robert but tried not to show it. No problem. I can entertain myself. Once alone, I decided to tidy up the living room as a small gesture of thanks for their hospitality, however strained it had been. As I straightened magazines and fluffed pillows, I accidentally knocked Amanda's tablet off the side table. It clattered to the floor, and when I picked it up, the screen illuminated with a text conversation. I should have immediately put it down. Invading someone's privacy went against everything I believed in. But a single phrase caught my eye. Eleanor's money. My name on her screen froze me in place. The ethical dilemma tore at me. Respect privacy or protect myself and possibly my son from whatever was happening here. Given everything I had observed and my mounting concerns, I made the difficult decision to read the messages. The conversation was between Amanda and someone named Stephanie, apparently a close friend. I scrolled up slightly to get context, my heart pounding with guilt and apprehension. Amanda. Mother-in-law arrives tomorrow. Kill me now. Stephanie. LOL. Just think about the payoff. How much did you say she got for the house? Amanda. $300K. And Robert says she hasn't bought a new place yet, so it's all just sitting there. Stephanie. Perfect timing with your renovation plans. Amanda. Exactly. I've left the contractor quotes visible accidentally, where she'll see them. Planted the seeds about senior living costs. By the time she leaves, I'll have her convinced investing in our house is the sensible option for everyone. Stephanie. Will she fall for that? Amanda. Please. She's pathetically eager for Robert's approval. And he does whatever I tell him anyway. I've already convinced him she's becoming forgetful and might need assisted living soon. Stephanie. Is she though? Amanda. Of course not. She's annoyingly sharp. But Robert barely sees her, so he has no way to know that. I just need her to sign over a chunk of cash before she blows it all on cruise ships and bingo. Stephanie. What if she wants to live with you guys instead of assisted living? Cheaper option. Amanda. I would literally rather die. Besides, once we get the money, phase 2 is cutting contact. I'm thinking a big manufactured argument should do it. Then poor Robert will be too hurt and angry to maintain a relationship. Stephanie. You're evil. I love it. Amanda. I've tolerated his mother for 7 years. I deserve that money way more than she does. She'll just waste it. Stephanie. What does Robert think about all this? Amanda. He doesn't know the details. Just thinks I'm trying to help his mother make good financial decisions for her future. He's so stupidly trusting. Stephanie. The renovation will be amazing though. Worth all the mother-in-law drama. Amanda? Absolutely. And once she's out of the picture permanently, we can finally live without her constant calls and neediness. I've never liked her anyway, only tolerated her for Robert's sake. The messages continued, but my hands were shaking too badly to scroll further. I set the tablet down exactly as I had found it, then made my way to the guest bathroom on unsteady legs. Locking the door behind me, I slid down to the floor and tried to control my breathing. The brutal reality of Amanda's true feelings hit me like physical blows. The casual cruelty, the calculated manipulation, the complete disregard for both Robert and me as human beings. And worst of all, the realization that she had already been poisoning my son against me, laying groundwork to separate us permanently. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed suddenly older, the lines of grief now deepened by betrayal. How could I have missed the signs? What had happened to my bright, independent son that he could be so thoroughly controlled? Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed trying to decide what to do. Confronting Amanda directly would likely backfire. She would deny everything, twist my words, make me sound paranoid or senile to Robert. Waiting to speak with Robert alone seemed futile too. Amanda had clearly been working for months or years to undermine his trust in me. As the shock began to wear off, a deep sadness took its place. Not just for myself but for Robert. He was trapped in a relationship with someone who spoke about him with contempt, who planned to use him as a pawn in her schemes. The son I loved deserved better than this manipulative arrangement masquerading as a marriage. I felt physically ill, my stomach clenching painfully as I imagined the future Amanda had planned, one where I was first exploited, then discarded, separated from my only child. After losing Frank, the thought of losing Robert too was unbearable. And yet, confronting this situation directly might accomplish exactly that. For the first time, I truly understood the depth of Amanda's game. Every interaction had been choreographed, every conversation designed to extract information or plant suggestions. Even my placement in the isolated guest room now seemed calculated rather than considerate. I reached for my phone, desperately wanting to call someone for advice, but who? My closest friends were back in Michigan. Frank would have known what to do, but he was gone. I was entirely alone in this house, facing an adversary who had been planning my financial and familial demise with cheerful determination. The weight of this discovery crushed down on me, stealing my breath and blurring my vision with tears. What had I done to deserve such hatred? How had I failed so completely to protect my son from someone who viewed him as nothing more than an accessory to her ambitions? I opened my suitcase and looked at the bundles of cash I had brought with such hope and love. Money that was meant to fulfill my son's dreams had instead become the target of his wife's greed. The gift I had imagined presenting with joy now seemed like potential ammunition for further manipulation and control. In that moment, I realized I needed to leave. Not just this house, but this toxic situation. At least until I could figure out a way to help Robert see the truth without destroying our relationship in the process. The revelation left me with an impossible choice. Confront Amanda directly, tell Robert what I had discovered, or withdraw from the situation entirely. Each option carried significant risks. If I confronted Amanda, she would undoubtedly deny everything. Without proof beyond my word about messages I shouldn't have read, it would become a she said situation. Given her influence over Robert, I suspected he would side with his wife. Telling Robert directly seemed no better. Amanda had spent years methodically conditioning him to doubt me while trusting her implicitly. Would he believe that his wife was plotting to steal my money and cut me out of his life? Or would he see it as the paranoid accusations of an aging mother who disapproved of his wife? As I weighed my options, I remembered something Frank used to tell me during family disagreements. Sometimes the wisest move is to step back and let truth reveal itself in its own time. I made my decision. I would leave quietly, without confrontation or accusations. But I wouldn't disappear completely. I would leave evidence of my original intentions and enough information for Robert to eventually discover the truth himself. I checked the time. Amanda had been gone about 2 hours and likely wouldn't return for several more. Robert wouldn't be home until late evening. This was my window of opportunity. First, I packed my belongings efficiently, leaving no trace of my presence in the guest room except for what I deliberately chose to leave behind. Then I sat at the small desk and began writing a letter to my son. "My dearest Robert," I began, tears already blurring my vision. "By the time you read this, I will have left your home. This isn't how I imagine this visit ending, but sometimes life takes unexpected turns. I came here with a purpose, to give you the entire proceeds from the sale of our family home. $300,000 that your father and I always wanted you to have to open your own auto shop. The dream you've had since you were 16. Working alongside Frank in our garage, I discovered something during my stay that has deeply troubled me. Evidence that Amanda plans to use this money for house renovations rather than your dream. Worse, I found messages indicating her intention to eventually separate us completely. I know this is painful to read and perhaps difficult to believe. I don't ask you to take my word for it. Instead, I ask you to look closely at your life and your marriage. Are you truly happy? Do you still pursue your own dreams? Do you maintain connections with friends and family outside your relationship with Amanda? I've decided not to create a dramatic confrontation that would force you to choose between your mother and your wife. That wouldn't be fair to you. Instead, I'm stepping back to give you space to see the situation clearly in your own time. The money I brought for you is still yours whenever you're ready. Not for home renovations, but for the auto shop that would honor your father's legacy and fulfill your own passion. I love you unconditionally, regardless of what happens next. When you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting. You can always reach me at my new number below. With all my love, Mom." I sealed the letter in an envelope and considered where to hide it. It needed to be somewhere Amanda wouldn't find it, but Robert eventually would. I remembered something from his childhood, his prized baseball glove that Frank had given him for his 10th birthday. Robert had mentioned keeping it in the guest room closet with other memorabilia when they moved to the new house. Sure enough, in the back of the closet was a cardboard box labeled Robert's stuff. Inside was the worn leather glove, still shaped to my son's boyhood hand. I tucked the envelope deep inside the glove, knowing that even if Amanda went through my room after I left, she would likely ignore this box of Robert's sentimental items. After a moment's consideration, I decided to leave $5,000 with the letter. Enough to show my intentions were sincere, but not enough to fuel Amanda's renovation plans if she discovered it first. With my decision made and letter hidden, I called a taxi service and requested a pickup as soon as possible. While waiting, I wiped away any evidence of tears and composed myself. This would be hard enough without breaking down completely. The taxi arrived 20 minutes later. As I wheeled my suitcase down the front path, I caught sight of a car turning onto the street that looked like Amanda's. My heart raced as I quickly climbed into the taxi. "Airport, please," I told the driver, ducking down slightly as we pulled away from the curb. Through the rear window, I saw Amanda's car pull into the driveway. Had she seen me leaving? I couldn't be sure. "You okay, ma'am?" the taxi driver asked, catching my expression in the rearview mirror. "Just a difficult family situation," I replied, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "I've seen that look before," he said kindly. "Whatever it is, it'll work out how it's supposed to. Always does." As we drove away from my son's house, leaving behind both the letter and my hopes for this visit, I finally allowed myself to cry quiet, dignified tears that the compassionate driver pretended not to notice. The $300,000 remained secure in my suitcase, along with the shattered pieces of what I had thought this visit would be. The airport hotel room felt anonymous and cold, but it provided the sanctuary I desperately needed. After checking in, I collapsed onto the bed, emotionally drained from the day's revelations and decisions. My phone had been buzzing persistently since about an hour after my departure, calls from both Robert and Amanda that I wasn't yet ready to answer. I scrolled through the text messages. Amanda's were performatively concerned. "Eleanor, where are you? We're worried sick. Please let us know you're safe. Robert is beside himself with worry. If you were unhappy with something, you could have talked to us instead of disappearing." Each message was carefully crafted to portray her as the concerned daughter-in-law, while subtly suggesting my behavior was irrational. I recognized the manipulation tactics now, seeing clearly what I had previously missed. Robert's messages seemed genuinely distressed. "Mom, where are you? Please call me. What happened? Did something upset you? Please just let me know you're okay. Mom, I'm really worried. At least text me back so I know you're safe. His concern tore at my heart, but I knew I needed time to process everything before speaking with him. I sent a brief text. I'm safe. Need some time. We'll call soon. Love you. Then I turned off my phone, unable to bear more messages or calls. The next week passed in a blur of grief and reflection. I returned to Michigan and my temporary apartment, going through the motions of daily life while struggling to come to terms with what had happened. I felt as though I was mourning a second loss, first Frank, and now the relationship I thought I had with my son and daughter-in-law. After several days, I reached out to my oldest friend Patricia, inviting her for coffee. At 72, Patricia had weathered many family storms of her own, and possessed wisdom I desperately needed. You did the right thing, she assured me after I recounted the entire story. Confronting Amanda would have backfired spectacularly, and Robert isn't ready to see the truth yet. But what if he never sees it? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if she succeeds in cutting me out of his life completely? Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Trust your son. He's been manipulated, yes, but he's still Frank's boy. Still your boy. The truth has a way of revealing itself, especially when someone's character is as fundamentally flawed as Amanda's sounds. I just don't understand how I missed the signs for so long. Because you wanted to believe the best of the woman your son chose, Patricia said gently. And manipulative people can be extraordinarily convincing when it serves their purposes. On Patricia's advice, I made an appointment with a financial advisor to ensure my remaining assets were secure. We set up a trust for Robert that would specifically support his auto shop dream, but couldn't be accessed for any other purpose. It was a way to protect both the money and Frank's legacy, while still honoring my original intention. 10 days after my abrupt departure, Robert finally called again. This time I answered. Mom. His voice sounded tired, strained. What happened? Why did you leave like that? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Did you find my letter, Robert? A pause. No. What letter? My heart sank. Either he hadn't looked in his baseball glove, or Amanda had found it first. I left you a letter explaining everything. It was in your old baseball glove in the guest room closet. Amanda cleaned up the guest room right after you left, he said slowly. She didn't mention finding any letter. Of course she hadn't. Robert, I need to ask you something important. Are you alone right now? Can you speak freely? Another pause. I'm at work on my lunch break. Why? I proceeded cautiously, aware that a full revelation might push him away completely. I left because I discovered something troubling while I was there. Something about Amanda's plans for my money. What are you talking about? His tone immediately became defensive. Amanda doesn't care about your money. I saw messages on her tablet, Robert. Messages about using my house money for your renovations. About convincing me I needed assisted living. About eventually cutting me out of your life entirely. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. That's not possible. You must have misunderstood. I wish I had, I said quietly, but her words were very clear. So you snooped through my wife's private messages and then ran away instead of talking to us? Anger had replaced confusion in his voice. Do you know how worried I was? I thought something had happened to you. I'm sorry for worrying you, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. But I needed time to think. And yes, I saw her messages accidentally at first, then made the decision to read more. I'm not proud of invading her privacy, but I'm not sorry I learned the truth. The truth according to you, he snapped. Amanda's been nothing but supportive about you. She's the one who suggested we invite you to stay with us. This surprised me. She told you it was her idea? Yes. She knows how much I've missed you since Dad died. The manipulation ran even deeper than I had realized. I decided to take a risk. Robert, I have copies of the messages. I took photos with my phone before I left. I can send them to you if you want to see for yourself. I hadn't actually taken photos, but the bluff might reveal whether Robert truly wanted to know the truth or preferred his comfortable illusion. His breathing changed. You have proof? Yes. Another long pause. Send it. I need to get back to work now. After we hung up, I faced another ethical dilemma. I had lied about having photos of the messages, but the essence of what I had reported was absolutely true. After considerable thought, I composed an email to Robert detailing exactly what I had read, reconstructing Amanda's words as accurately as my memory allowed, and being completely honest about not having actual screenshots. 3 days passed with no response. I feared I had lost him completely. Then late one evening my phone rang. Robert's name appeared on the screen. I talked to Amanda, he said without preamble. Confronted her with what you told me. My heart raced. And she denied it at first. Then said you were taking things out of context. Then admitted some of it but said it was just venting to a friend, not serious plans. His voice sounded hollow, but the way she explained it, the inconsistencies, I could tell she was lying. Relief and sadness washed over me simultaneously. I'm so sorry, Robert. No, I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I should have seen it. There were so many signs. The way friends stop calling. How we never visit you. How she always has reasons why my auto shop dream isn't practical right now. I've been blind, Mom. She's very good at what she does, I said gently. This isn't your fault. Can we meet? He asked suddenly. Not here at the house. Somewhere neutral. I need to see you. We arranged to meet at a restaurant halfway between our locations the following weekend. When I saw Robert walk in, I was shocked by his appearance. He had lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. But when he saw me, his face lit up with a genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. Mom, he said simply, embracing me tightly. Over lunch, Robert revealed more about his marriage than he ever had before. The constant criticism, the subtle undermining of his confidence, the isolation from friends and family that had happened so gradually he hardly noticed until he was completely alone. She always has reasons for everything, he explained. Logical-sounding explanations for why we can't visit you, why my friends aren't good for me, why my dreams aren't practical. And I believed her because I thought she had my best interests at heart. What will you do now? I asked cautiously. He sighed heavily. I don't know yet. But for the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly, really seeing things as they are instead of how she presents them. He reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth, even knowing I might not believe you. As painful as the situation was, I felt the first stirrings of hope. My son was beginning to find his way back to himself. 6 months after my hasty departure from Robert and Amanda's home, everything had changed. Robert had initially tried to work on his marriage, suggesting counseling and more open communication. But once Amanda realized he was questioning her control, her behavior had escalated dramatically. It was like once the mask slipped, she couldn't put it back on convincingly, Robert explained during one of our weekly phone calls. She started making obvious mistakes, contradicting herself, getting angry when I asked simple questions. 3 months after our restaurant meeting, Robert moved out of their shared home and filed for divorce. The process was bitter and contentious, with Amanda alternating between vicious attacks and tearful pleas for reconciliation. But Robert remained firm in his decision. Strengthened by the evidence of manipulation, he continued to discover once he started looking for it. I found my address book in her desk drawer, he told me. The one that went missing 2 years ago with all my friends' contact information. And the birthday cards from you that she claimed never arrived. She kept them all, Mom. Just hid them from me. Robert rented a small apartment near his workplace and began the slow process of rebuilding his life and self-confidence. I visited monthly, staying in a nearby hotel to give him space while still providing support. During these visits, I watched my son gradually transform back into the person he had been before Amanda, laughing more freely, speaking with conviction, making decisions without second-guessing himself. On my 3rd visit, I finally told him about the $300,000 I had brought to their house. I still have it, I explained. It's always been for you, Robert. For your auto shop. He shook his head firmly. I can't take that much money from you, Mom. You need it for your future. Your father and I always intended for you to have it, I insisted. We didn't need a fancy retirement. We needed to know our son would fulfill his potential and his dreams. After considerable discussion, Robert reluctantly agreed to accept the money as an investment in his business rather than a gift. We drew up proper paperwork with an attorney, establishing me as a silent partner in his future shop. 3 months later, I attended the grand opening of Frank's auto shop, tears streaming down my face as Robert cut the ribbon on the entrance. The sign featured a silhouette of a man and boy working on an engine together, an homage to the hours he and Frank had spent in our garage. Dad would be so proud, I whispered, squeezing Robert's hand. He's here with us, Robert replied, his own eyes glistening. I feel him every time I pick up a wrench. The shop quickly gained a reputation for honest work and fair prices. Robert hired 2 young apprentices, telling me he wanted to mentor them the way Frank had mentored him. Watching him in his element, confident, skilled, respected, healed something in both of us. Meanwhile, I had made significant changes in my own life. I purchased a small 2-bedroom house about 15 minutes from Robert's shop and 20 minutes from his apartment, close enough for regular visits but far enough to maintain our independence. I joined a book club, a gardening society, and a widow support group, building a new community around myself. On Sunday evenings, Robert came to my house for dinner, a tradition we both cherished. Sometimes he brought friends or his apprentices, expanding our family circle in organic, healthy ways. The shadow Amanda had cast over our relationship gradually faded as we rebuilt our bond on stronger foundations. One evening, as we sat on my patio after dinner, Robert asked the question I had been expecting for months. Have you forgiven her? I considered carefully before answering. I've forgiven Amanda for my own peace of mind, not for hers. Carrying anger and resentment would only hurt me in the long run. I'm still working on that part, Robert admitted. Some days are easier than others. Forgiveness doesn't mean what she did was okay, I reminded him. It just means you're not letting it control your life anymore. What about forgiveness for myself? He asked quietly. For being so blind for so long. I reached over and took his hand. That's the most important forgiveness of all. We all make mistakes, Robert. We all miss signs we should have seen. What matters is that when you finally did see the truth, you had the courage to act on it. As the sun set over my new garden, I reflected on the journey we had taken. The pain and betrayal had been real and devastating. But through it all, the bond between mother and son had proven resilient enough to withstand even the most determined efforts to break it. The money that Amanda had coveted so desperately had ultimately served its true purpose, enabling my son to build a life of authenticity and purpose. Frank would have considered that the best possible investment. You know what I've learned from all this? I said, watching the first stars appear in the twilight sky. What's that? Robert asked. That sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stand firm in our truth, even when it would be easier to look away, and that it's never too late to reclaim your life and your dreams. Robert nodded thoughtfully. I've learned that too, and that I should have listened to Dad when he said you were the wisest person he knew. We laughed together, and in that moment, I felt Frank's presence so strongly it took my breath away. He would have been proud of how we had weathered this storm, emerging stronger and wiser on the other side. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. There are still difficult days, still moments when the pain of betrayal resurfaces. But those moments grow fewer as time passes, replaced by the joy of authentic connection, and the peace that comes from living in truth. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between confronting a painful truth or maintaining a comfortable illusion? Remember that standing up for yourself doesn't diminish your love for others. Sometimes, it's the most powerful expression of self-respect. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and know that whatever challenges you're facing, you have the strength to overcome them. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to write a new chapter in your story.